Hey guys, Mikosh here. Today I'll be giving you a guide on how to make an endgame armor stacker for the Chieftain. Before we get into the build, I wanted to discuss the Marauder versus Scion question. If you are entering armor stacking at a high-end budget, you might want to either go Marauder for the Chieftain or go for the Scion with the Ascendant. If you had really pretty much any amounts of currency, so unlimited funds, Scion will be a better option. It scales better later in the endgame. However, Marauder, especially the Chieftain, will be able to increase a lot of your armor, your max resistance, without having to invest much, especially this league. Even with a small amount of mirrors, I still think Marauder could compete, definitely compete against the Scion. If the charms or the that which was taken still remain, Scion in general will still be a better option. However, don't think of Chieftain as a bad tier. Like if you put them into tiers, Scion and the Chieftain will nearly be at the similar level. Now the Marauder has 3 Ascendancy, the Chieftain, the Berserker, and the Juggernaut. I'm going to be discussing the Chieftain as this is the most popular and often, well, one of the best options for armor stacking. Berserker, I'm still testing. It scales your DPS like completely bonkers. It's very, very strong. However, you're going to have to construct your build a bit differently, so I will not be talking about it later. If I do make the POB, I will have the POB in the description. The Juggernaut, I think, is very strong. It gives you a mini Transcendence, it gives you, accuracy, and you are able to run Doriani pretty earlier on. Chieftain, you cannot run Doriani whatsoever, and Berserk, you can. However, I think in the early game, Juggernaut will be better, but later on, Juggernaut will not be the best version. So to get into the mechanics of the build, our main mechanic is going to be our Overcap. So we're basically going to be resistance stacking, and the specific resistance we're going to be stacking is going to be fire resistant. So now the reason we're stacking a lot of fire resistance is, first of all, there are mods, the Overcap mods. The main one is going to be the armor is increased by Overcap fire resistance. Pretty simple. If you have 500% increase Overcap fire, that's 500% increase armor, which is, well, very strong. On top of that, the Chieftain also grants you half of your fire resistance into cold and lightning, which means if you have 500% overcapped fire resistance, you actually have 250 cold and 250 lightning. This means we're able to stack only fire resistance to get all of our elemental resistance up, as well as if you are on the mirror tier, you can be using a double overcap grasping mail, which grants you armor is increased by overcap fire, as well as evasion rating is increased by overcap cold. This means if you have one choice, you will go for the overcap fire. If you have the choice of going mirror tier, you will be going for the double overcap. Now our main defensive layer for armor stacking is going to be the percentage of armor applied to fire, cold, and lightning damage taken from hits. That doesn't work on damage over time. However, because we are 90% elemental resistance cap, we're going to be pretty chill on that. And the elemental hits, well, considering we have 3, 4, 5 million armor, this is a lot of armor that is also applied to hits. This means we have a double layer of defense. Example, you take 10,000 fire damage. Well, 90% of it is completely nullified thanks to our resistance, so we are left with 1,000 damage taken. Then we have our armor. Armor is going to apply, let's say, at 90%, so on the best case scenario, we will only take 100 damage instead of 10,000. It is completely broken. However, because we're not going Transcendence, which means we are not shifting all of our physical damage into something else, we have a 90% physical reduction for physical hits. This means we're pretty much immortal to anything except enemies that have a high overwhelm physical. This means they're able to kind of penetrate your armor, and those are often going to be the reasons you die. So if you're an armor stacker, you're not going to be dying a lot, like very, very rarely. And if you die at randomly because a random enemy just hit you and you died, this means the enemy had the overwhelmed physical. It is not so expensive to get into the application of armor compared to the Transcendence physical damage taken as, which means you are able to scale, well, put your currency to scale something else, such as your armor, instead of having to be Transcendence. We're going to be aura stacking. Armor stacking is kind of a subgenre of the aura stackers. This means we are going to be, first of all, scaling the gem level as high as possible. This is the main way of scaling the auras. That's why we're going to have March of the Legions. That's why if we have a mirror tier helmet, we're going to go for the +6 level helmets. You want your gems to be the highest level possible. Once that's done, we're then going to have all of our increased aura effect thanks to introspection and the rest of our tree. Another thing to note when aura stacking is you're also going to need mana reservation efficiency. For example, let's take Purity of Elements. It will take 50% of your mana. With mana reservation efficiency, this will make that they take less. Example, if you have 100% increased mana reservation efficiency, instead of taking 50%, purity of elements will only take 25%. Considering we have purity of elements, wrath, determination, haste, vitality, discipline, all of that, we need a lot of mana reservation efficiency to be able to put all of those auras, and they are very important. Now, scaling armor is going to be, well, quite simple. We're first of all not only going to scale armor, we're also going to scale evasion rating thanks to Iron Reflex. What's really cool about that is we're able to scale evasion rating thanks to our aura effect increases. Then it's transformed into armor, and then that armor you can also increase it and scale it thanks to armor increases. This means if you had the choice between getting more evasion or getting more armor, the better option is going to be to get more evasion. However, it is very strong only if you have a strong increase in armor as well, right? If you completely discard your increases in armor and you only go for evasion, well, transforming it into armor will not help you. Now, for going either Resolute Technique or Elemental Overload, Resolute Technique is going to be often better for projectiles. Why? Because you can then use Precise Technique and use the Point Blank. Those will give you 40% more attack damage for Precise Technique and 30% more damage for projectile at the start of their movement with Point Blank. This will synergize extremely well, especially with projectiles, Molten Strike, Lightning Strike. However, if you go for non-projectiles, usually it's better to go Elemental Overload. You could go Elemental Overload with projectiles, also it works. Elemental Overload makes that you gain 40% more elemental damage for 8 seconds if you've dealt a critical strike in the past 8 seconds. This is very good because you don't have to scale any crit multi, and you just need enough crit chance to crit every 8 seconds. So really, your crit chance even at 10% is more than enough. So let's talk about the gear. The weapons are going to be Replica Dream Feathers. They are the best. Well, they are the best because they increase your damage per armor. Without them, you would lose pretty much all of your damage. Your body armor, the Overcap Fire is 100% needed at this point. That's kind of the point of the whole build. If you have the mirror tier, go for the double Overcap. So armor is increased by Overcap Fire, evasion rating is increased by Overcap Cold, and while you're at going for the mirror tier, there's also the increased global defense. Global defense is completely broken because it increases your evasion, increases your armor, and it also increases your energy shield. For the helmet, if you are not in the mirror tier, go for the reduced mana cost and the mana reservation efficiency. And for the explicits, you want the highest amount of levels, so the +2 AoE. If you can, another +2 aura. If you can, if not, not. Energy shield, resistance, and attributes. If you're going for the mirror tier, I would go for the +6 level helmet. So the implicits are the +1 socketed aura gems. Socketed skills get a 92% cost and reservation multiplier, which is very good because that's kind of like another enlighten. Increased effect of non-curse, that's very strong. And then you have plus socketed strength, plus socketed int, AoE, aura, energy shield, area of effect. So very strong, very powerful, and it will boost your DPS by a ton. I'm telling you, it's maybe a 25 to 35% increased damage. For the amulet, you could go for the Eternal Struggle, which kind of costs near a mirror or sometimes a mirror. Make sure that the Searing Exarch is dominant, so kill enemies that have 15% or lower life on hit. It's kind of like a better Culling Strike. You want the effect of non-curse, as I said, and as the implicits are, and then the other implicit you want to increase armor, energy shield, evasion. For the annoyance, for any amulet that you go for charisma. Now, another way of going it that is quite interesting is going for the Simplex amulet with the 20% mana reservation efficiency of skill and the +2 level of all skills gems. When you lose that Culling Strike, yes, you will be losing damage in the end. However, if you don't have all of your clusters with the 6% mana reservation efficiency with the 35% increase effect, or if you don't have a level 5 enlighten, which is like 2 mirrors, that 22% mana reservation efficiency is a lot. Now, yes, you do not have any attributes and you lose the bit of global defense. However, I think it is worth it for a mirror to go for that instead of going for a mirror for the amulet, another mirror or 2 for the enlightens, and then having to spend even more on your clusters. For the rings, if it's a non-projectile build, go for Original Sin. It is completely broken because it makes all the resistance to 0 and all your elemental damage is chaos, which means you don't have to think about chaos or any resistance penetration, and energy shield is kind of useless for them because you go right through the energy shield and hit directly on their life. For the rare ring, you can go for the reduced mana cost if you can, and if you have the budget, for the mirror tier with the greatest determination and frenzy. Resistance, attributes, evasion, those are all good stuff. If it's a projectile skill, go for Original Sin and Nimbus. Nimbus will grant you pretty much 100% more projectile damage, so it's completely broken. Now let's say you didn't have Mirror Tier, or you don't have enough currency for an Original Sin. If it's a non-projectile, just go for a rare ring. It doesn't have to be Mirror Tier. As I said, it's going to be the resistance, the attributes, the evasion, and the mana cost. And you just have it twice, so maybe a Calandra's Touch. And if it's a projectile, keep the Nimbus and use the same rare ring. For the belts, at this point, it's a Mage Blood, 4 flask or nothing. Don't go for 3, don't go for 2, it's only a 4 flask. Stop using the Ruby Flask. I don't know why people are using the Ruby Flask. It is not better than the Jade Flask. You want a Silver Flask, a Stibnite Flask, a Jade Flask, and the Basalt Flask, I think that's the name. You can then use the 70% increased effect and the 25% increased effect for a total of 95% increased effect. For the boots, March of the Legion, it's either going to be the +2 AoE, +2 Aura, or the +1 level. By the way, if you see the +1 level of socketed gems instead of the +2 AoE, it ends up being the same thing. Why? Because we have empowers in the link, and it will also increase the level of our empower. And if our empower goes up by 1 level, it will grant us another +1 level to the rest. I suggest going, if you have any currency, going for a +2 and a +1. +1 will grant bonus not only to Grace, but as I said, to the empower as well as the inspiration, which is, you know, another, which will reduce the cost a bit. In the skill gems, you want Grace and Power. If you do not have Smite as your main skill, you're going to put Smite in there, and Inspiration. If you have Smite as your main skill, you can replace Smite for duration support. For the gloves, you want the extra target, and this is the main one you're going to want to. Go for the +2. I don't know why in the pictures I don't have any that is +2, but go for the non-Val Strike skills, target 2 additional nearby enemies, and then the second one you can go for either Lightning Exposure, Mark Effect, or Pierce an additional enemy, if you're going for Lightning Strike. For the explicits, of course, you want the +2 level of AoE, attack speed, area of effect. If you're going for Smite, you know it's very good. Energy Shield. Now, if you really love Berserk, you can go for Kaom for higher uptime. However, I think it just sucks ass. But don't go for that. Just stick to rare gloves. However, I am going to be doing a bit more testing, so it might change. For the clusters, you want the 6% mana reservation efficiency of skills with a 3 passive, not a 2 passive. You want increased effect on small passive. Depending on your budget, it can either be 25 or 35% increased effect. If you can, of course, go for 35. However, I know it's going to be quite expensive. You want introspection. This is the most important mod on the cluster. That's the reason we have all of those clusters. And then for the 2 last mods, you want attributes and resistance. Well, resistance is better than attributes. If you can, go for the fire. Now, if you are making it or you're buying them and you see it's not fire resistance, you can just change any resistance into fire resistance thanks to your Hoardy crafting station, and it's gonna cost you even less than a divine. You want a 3 passive voice minimum. You don't want the 5 passive voice. If you don't have the budget to go for 3s, simply don't go for a voice and go for a normal 8 passive cluster with 2 socketed. For the charms and that which was taken, you want the 3% of armor applied. This is our defensive layer. It is mad important. I often suggest 2 times that mod, scattered in different charms or that which was taken. You want maximum fire resistance until you hit the 90%. You want chance to inflict wither if you're playing Original Sin. This will make your DPS go up by like 40%, some dumb shit. So very strong, very OP. If you have the Simplex Amulet, go for a Culling Strike. If not, don't go for a Culling Strike. Mana reservation efficiency of skills. If, for example, your clusters aren't strong enough to, well, make you able to smack all of those auras, you can go for the reservation efficiency. Frenzy on hit chance is very good. Banner skills have no reservation is quite good if we are running our banners. For the Forbidden Jewels, I suggest Aspect of Carnage. Aspect of Carnage is 40% more damage, but you take 10% more damage. However, considering we're literally immortal, that extra 10% damage will be, well, it's gonna do nothing for you. You can go for the Unbreakable, which will grant you the 8% armor applied. It is definitely, its value definitely dropped because of this league, but the thing is it's 8%, right? And 8% is pretty much 3 charms of the armor applied. This means, first of all, you don't have to search for them, and when you want 2 good mods with the 3% armor applied, it will cost you a lot. So you can go for the Unbreakable. It will save you a lot of currency in the long run, and for your charms, you can then invest into different mods. You could also go for Crave the Slaughter, which will grant you more maximum rage as well as rage on hit. Now, if you go for Crave the Slaughter, is it enough to make you have a good Berserk uptime? Not really. However, just Rage will inherently give you bonuses, and well, it's good. It's good, right? Now, between Crave the Slaughter and Aspect of the Carnage or Unbreakable, I think Aspect of Carnage is going to be the best one. You could also go for no Forbidden Jewels and just completely drop them. It is possible. It doesn't mean that your build isn't good. On that note, that will be the build guide. If you have any comments, criticism, you can always let me know in the video. I read pretty much all the comments. I just sometimes don't have time to answer. Have fun and good luck.